Okay, welcome back, and this is our final video for IP network classes. Okay, did you ever notice that a lot of the times that I'm writing up my examples, I probably made heavy use of one particular set of numbers, 192.168.1 dot something, like 1.2, and you probably also saw me type other numbers like 192.168.30 dot something. So notice that these numbers keep starting with 192.168. In fact, unfortunately, you're not at the actual college right now, but if you could, I would immediately get you to open up your command prompt and type ipconfig and take a look at the network address. And well, take a look at this. Here's my network address is 192.168.1.198. If you try this at home, there's a very high probability you will also see almost exactly the same IP numbers. Again, you'll probably always start with 192.168. In fact, you can see down here there's some other things going on. 192.168.23. There's also 192.168.229. If you're taking the database course, for example, you're probably connecting to a database server at 192.168.30.31. Yeah, this is very, very popular number. So what's going on with these things? Okay, well, here's the idea. First of all, you'll notice on my IP class page that I had open, there's this area down here called private IP addresses. And there was three different classes of networks. And take a look at this one right here, Class C network. Private address or private networks always begin with 192.168.0.0. Okay, even though it's not really a Class C network, it certainly fits the range of the Class C network, but the subnet mask is a little bit funny. Okay, and what these things are used for, this is used for setting up your own little networks. For example, okay, so suppose I was actually working at the college and I wanted to have a router, and I wanted to have a router with a switch, I guess, is the thing I'm going to need. Sorry about that. Switches and 2960. So suppose I'm teaching a course about networking, and I probably have myself a router, a couple of computers in my office, and a switch. Okay, so what I would do is, okay, hook this up to here and to here. Okay, and finally from here into here and onto here. Okay, here we go. So we're not going to worry about configuring these things. So you see what I've done here is this could be my office. Okay, so I'm using the address as 192.168.1.2, 192.168.30.21, and probably for a router address, well, I'll probably use the same thing, 192.168.1.1, and yeah, but by the way, that's exactly it. Okay, in fact, I've got exactly this particular network configuration set up in my office right now, and that's the 192.168.1.192 that we saw a few seconds ago. Now, what about if somebody else in the School of IT also needs to do some networking? Now, if we were actually sharing a real Class B network, we would have to get together and say, okay, well, I'm about to use this number, so please don't use it because we'll cause some routing problems. But because this happens to be known as a private network, it means that there's no problems about having our own version. Now, obviously, we cannot talk to each other because we have our own private networks, but we're allowed to do whatever we want. In fact, we're allowed to plug in everything into the college network. Okay, so we would be allowed to make this type of connection. Okay, so here, let me plug this in here. So we could actually both plug into the college network at the same time, but because I'm using a private network, what I would do is I would configure my router not to send any of these addresses back out. So I would never configure IP routing, that RIP protocol, to actually broadcast out to the college router the fact that I've got a 192.168.1. Okay, so these things are allowed to be repeated across everywhere. And that's why if you do a search right now, if you are at home and you open up a command prompt type ipconfig, here is the address I bet you're going to see. I bet you're going to see 192.168.100. something. Okay, and that's because that Ooredoo router has been configured to use 192.168.100 as the usual thing. But if you're actually connecting, you've got another router at home because you wanted some better Wi-Fi access than what they were providing, you may bump into either 192 or 192. Did I say 196? Sorry, I meant 192. I probably even said 192. Okay, 192.168. The other thing that you might see is you might see the number 192.168.1 dot something, or you might see the address 192.168.0 dot something. And this, which one of these you end up seeing, is probably dependent upon which piece of networking equipment you're actually using. So if you're using one provided by Eridu, they've probably configured it this way because that was a very common technique, or they may have configured as 192.168.1, or it may have ended up being configured as 192.168.0.1. Okay, so it all depends on how things were configured. If you go into my house, you'll find that some of the stuff is set up this way, and I've got some other networks as well that I use because, well, I tend to configure things a little bit more complex than what most people would do because, well, I've got different subnets that I'm doing different things on. So you will find this. Now, if you run around through the college, especially in the School of IT, and take a look at the VLAN computers, you're going to find they all begin with 192.168. something. And that was simply a decision that we made about a year ago about how we were going to organize and structure the IP addresses. There's also a handful of other things. So if these are not big enough, and by the way, these are actually quite a bit because I've got both of these octets to work through. If you need something that's quite a bit bigger, you can move yourself up to a Class B network, and you're supposed to be using the numbers 172.16 all the way up to 132.31. That'll actually give you quite a few more computers if you need really big networks, and if you need an absolutely massive network, then you go ahead and use this 10.0.0.0 all the way up to 10. Whatever numbers. So these are really quite large. So, but these things are of course known as private IP addresses. From a private IP address, it is not possible to route a message from your computer to anywhere else in the internet without another form of communication. But that one I can't cover yet. Okay, but that will be probably in a couple of video lectures from now. Okay, so again, nothing to submit from this one. This was just a very quick introduction. In case you're wondering why this number 192.168 keeps appearing, it's because it's known as a private IP address. So I know I can use them without any conflicts with anything else on this particular network and wherever I am, as long as nobody else happens to be using the same thing. So yes, we do have a little bit of challenge here. If I want to build up a 192.168 network, I have to be careful about how I plug it into the actual School of IT because we happen to be using exactly the same thing. Okay, so that's all for this video lesson. Come back next time, and I've got some stuff that's going to help you deal or alleviate the problems we've been having with all of these crazy looking numbers. Okay, so see you in the next lesson.